So it probably felt really good for the Bulls last night. For the first time, I think in about 2 weeks, it's been a little bit. They're back at home in the friendly confines of the United Center, hosting NBA basketball. Yeehaw! And they're hosting a James Harden-less, new-look, Victor Oladipo-led Houston Rockets team. Like, it seems weird to even think about. Like, James Harden is with the Brooklyn Nets. He could sit there and be wild and stupid and go party at strip clubs and crap. He could sit there and be a choking chode in the playoffs, but pout and sulk and get his way out to a potential situation where he could be a part of a contender. Hey, you know what, as unfair fundamentally as that seems, because it is, the reality is, I applaud James Harden for manipulating his leverage. He felt he had leverage. By God, he was able to execute it. And by God, he got to be where the hell he wanted to be. We had heard reports for months that was his preference of where he wanted to go. So in the meantime, though, the Houston Rockets have to now turn the page, and they got to move on under head coach Stephen Silas. And Victor Oladipo, you know, whether he has any designs or intentions of being there long term, probably not. But it's the situation you're in for now. And as a result, the Rockets are going to feel different. It's going to take them a little time to figure out their chemistry and their flow for the rest of this year. Meanwhile, you know, it's a little bit of a risky spot for the Bulls. Yes, you're back at home and you're taking on kind of a new look, lesser version of the Rockets, but you're without Otto Porter and Patrick Williams. They're part of a group along with Satoransky and Hutchinson that were inactive for this game. So those are some key cogs, some key contributors that were not in the lineup. And you also have a little bit of history going against you, even though, again, this was going against the James Harden-led Houston Rockets. You're talking about a Rockets team that the last time the Bulls beat them was back in, I believe, it was March of 2016. That's almost 5 years of playing the Rockets and losing to them every damn time. So time to wipe out some of that history of the past and start a new era. Yeah, there we go. And the Bulls came out of the gates pretty strongly in the first. They were up 28-16 after one. The Rockets, not surprisingly to me, had a really, really sloppy start. They were 6 for 18 from the field. And what was really killer for them is not just the poor shooting in the first quarter, but it was the 9 turnovers. Like, they really were playing sloppy. They really were having trouble getting into any type of rhythm or a flow, and it showed. And the Bulls did a good job defensively with some of their help defense, some of their rotations, and contesting shots. That put the Rockets in that uncomfortable situation. The Bulls did a decent job of playing passing lanes, part of the reason for the 9 turnovers in the first quarter. So it was a good, impressive start for this Bulls team. And came back out in the second quarter and had a good performance there as well. Shot 50% from the field in the first half. Although you did start to see the Rockets figure it out a little bit better in the second quarter. Eric Gordon and Victor Oladipo certainly got warm a little bit, started to hit down a few shots, especially Gordon hit a couple of threes. Even with that, though, the Bulls were up 64-52 at the half, and what I really liked about this Bulls performance in the first half was not only defensively were they playing, you know, relatively good, sound basketball, especially for them, but offensively their attack was really balanced. I mean, Zach LaVine led the team at the half with 13 points, but you had a really, really balanced approach. You had 8 other Bulls with at least 5 points in the first half. So you weren't necessarily killing them with star power. You were killing them with depth and number of people that could do something on the offensive end. And when you can have people contributing like that, you could be a really tough team to defend, especially for a team like the Rockets who struggle a little defensively, mightily defensively as it is, and they have nobody really down low with any size that can really, you know, restrict the flow to the basket by the Bulls offense. So a really, really good start for them. I liked seeing them being able to spread the ball around so much and getting a bunch of folks involved in the offense. For the Rockets, you know, it's pretty much going to be a 3-man show, it felt like, all night if they had any chance of winning. Oladipo had 15 at the half. Christian Wood, I still can't believe for the life of me that the Detroit Pistons didn't want to keep Christian Wood. You wanted a Plumlee instead. It doesn't even matter which Plumlee. You wanted a Plumlee instead of Christian Wood. And even his contract, 3 years, $41 million. Like, you didn't want any piece of this? You didn't want a guy that could be 20-10 on a bad team? It seems like a pretty decent price to pay for somebody that can at least produce. And good Lord. This ended up being a really good move for Christian Wood. Granted, you probably thought you were going to play with James Harden, and you're not now. But you get an opportunity to really go out there and flex your stuff in Houston and become that secondary guy this year behind Oladipo and, setting yourself up in a couple of years for a much, much bigger contract. I just can't believe that Detroit didn't want him anymore. It's crazy to me. And then Eric Gordon chipped in 12 as well. I'll admit, so based off of some of the Bulls' history this year, a little concerned about how they would come out in the second half because you never know what this team, like they're a young team, and I thought Stacey King during the game did a really good job of talking about how the Bulls have to change their approach and their mindset and their perspective this year. Whereas in previous years or last year, they would sit there and get down 20 and then they'd be trying to scratch and claw their way back into games. Now they're in a situation where they're close or they're leading teams at the half, and now they got to figure out how to close games out and win them. They got to learn how to play with the lead, and that is something that they've struggled with at times this season, which is natural for younger teams. Like, they'll be up and down, there'll be a bit of a yo-yo, and they'll win games they shouldn't, and they'll lose games that they shouldn't. And my fears were at least initially validated early in that third quarter because the Rockets came out very quickly and got on a 12-2 run. But after that, the ship kind of steadied a little bit. Zach LaVine had a big performance in the third quarter. He put up 14. So even though the Rockets got hot a little bit out of the gate coming out of the third quarter, LaVine's 14 was enough to kind of help stem the tide, and the Bulls were still up 7 heading into the fourth. And you're looking at LaVine at that point, he had 27 points through 3 quarters. And it's amazing to me is watching LaVine in this game is it didn't even really feel like he was dominating the game or imposing his will. It felt like his offense was coming to him very easily, and I think part of that was the fact that he wasn't so much in ball hog mode. Like, the team was doing a good job of spreading the ball around, so a lot of his shots were easier to get. Like, I'd like to see him and this team play more like that the rest of the year. In the fourth quarter, the Rockets tried to hang around. I'll give them this. They hung around and they battled under head coach Steven Silas. Like, They had a chance, not a great chance, but they certainly had a chance. But it was just too much Bulls in the fourth quarter, too much balance, too many of the other small things that the Bulls did better on this night. So even though they had a lower shooting percentage from the field, they found a way to get it done, and they end up holding out the Rockets to win 125-120. For the Bulls, Zach LaVine led the way with 33 points. It felt like a quiet 33 points, but 33 points nonetheless. And then you had 6 other Bulls in double figures. That's Lauri Markkanen and Garrett Temple, and so forth. And that was a nice performance to see. Again, that balance I thought was really, really important and pivotal in this game. For the Rockets, Oladipo had 32, Christian Wood with 30, Eric Gordon rounded it out with 21. But the problem is they just didn't get a lot else out of the other 3 guys. Like, Boogie Cousins sucked in this game. You might as well not even put him on the floor. Just going to jack up some garbage-ass threes, and I ain't hitting shit. You ain't even hitting the broadside of your mama. Good Lord. And where the Bulls really won this game, I think, were a couple of key places. They hit a couple of more threes. That's one. They won the battle of the boards, 56-43. Not surprising for a Houston team that lacks a lot of size and a lot of physicality. The Bulls were able to go in there and give them some problem on the boards, especially the offensive glass. And the Bulls bench, again, proved to be the big difference of the night. They outscored the Rockets bench 41-28. When you look at a 5-point game, your bench outperforms the other team's bench by 13 points. You're going to win a good amount of those matchups when that happens, especially if your starters haven't completely and totally laid an egg. And that's basically what it was. So now you're looking at the Bulls, and you're saying, okay, they beat the Mavs last, Sunday night or Sunday afternoon. They come back Monday night and they beat the Rockets. Hey, winning 2 in a row. Now they're sitting at 6-8. Maybe you're starting to get some delusions about sliding into the playoffs and all of this and all of that. Hey, look, I don't think we should be thinking too much about the playoffs. I think we should be looking at some of the progress this team has made, and that's a positive. But also realizing that kind of what you're seeing out of them, like, it's one of these weird things. Because you look at some of these other games that they've lost, and you say, you know what? Like, you got 3 of their losses you felt like were really blowouts that I could think of, or wipeouts. It was Atlanta, Indiana, and Milwaukee. But other than that, I think their other losses were all really close, and they had chances to win, and they were in a position to potentially win. And then for one reason or another, they had victory slide out of their grasp. And they managed to find losses in there. But that's what mediocre teams do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how excited we should be about that. When fans are sitting there talking about the Bulls and back, they're 6-8. Like, don't get too carried away. This has been a fun team to watch so far this year from a standpoint of they're kind of that train wreck of up and down roller coaster. You don't know what the fuck you're going to get out of them from one quarter to the next. But when they get in a rhythm, man, they can play some really nice basketball. And when they're not, they can play some really bad basketball. It's a mediocre team. And we're just going to have to get used to this ride all year, that these games where they should have beaten the Rockets by 20 or 25 tonight, they beat them by 5. It's going to be the kind of season that it is. And I don't really know if I really want this team to make the playoffs or not, because they go into the playoffs and maybe as an 8 seed, they win one game. Now, what does that do for you? If anything, it creates a false sense of positivity of what the future really looks like. Or you miss the playoffs and you get tired of seeing losing after a while, especially with the Bulls, like how many times you have to rebuild. But, you know, you don't want to say, because even when you talk about in the NBA, tanking, it gives you more chances in the lottery, but it doesn't automatically guarantee that you're going to get the top player, the top pick. And a lot of times, even when you get the top pick, that doesn't mean you end up taking the top player. So, I don't know, it's kind of a weird place to be right now, but at least the Bulls aren't playing boring basketball. I've watched every game this year, and I'll give them that. Like, as they've gotten into the flow of the season, as they started to figure things out, I was impressed with the fact that 2 key contributors like Otto Porter and Patrick Williams were out tonight, and they found a way to win. You know, like, that's good news. Like, this team, this young team, Billy Donovan, they're combining to find ways to overcome obstacles, overcome challenges, not having key people in the rotation, starters at that, and, Otto Porter, basically their 6th man. They're finding ways to win these games. They're finding ways to be competitive in these games. That at least is cool. If I'm going to spend 2.5 hours watching an NBA game, watching a Bulls game, at least make it fun. Don't make it like watching the Bears offense for 3 hours on a Sunday. And they're certainly not doing that. So Bulls fans, you let me know what you think about the season so far. If it's your first time checking me out, and if you liked anything that I said at all, or even if you hated everything that I said, and you want to be able to come and get updated on future Bulls game recaps, I plan on doing recaps after every game that I watch this year, so there'll be plenty more of these to come. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button, and then follow me on Twitter so we can talk some more Bulls basketball.